Greetings, Nick Bowcott with Sweetwater here, and welcome to Pedal Tips for creating tight metal and rock sounds that cut through the mix. First, we're going to take a quick look back at how classic riff masters such as Ritchie Blackmore, Tony Iommi, and Brian May created their magical tones. And remember, those guys were doing this back in the good old pre-high gain amp days, therefore they had to find a way of making the amp sound bigger, and they did so via pedals, an art often referred to as front-ending your amp. And then we're going to look at modern day players using high gain amps and what they do to ensure their tones are both tight and cutting. And it might surprise you, but front-ending the amp is also involved. So let's get right to it. As ironic as it may sound, sometimes the magic tonal bullet in your setup might be one of the cheapest things in it. For example, you might have a vintage Les Paul that's worth more than your house. You might have a vast array of high-gain stacks that can do everything, including making coffee. But at the end of the day, the thing that makes all the difference, apart from your fingers, of course, and your heart and your head, is a cheap, old, beaten-up pedal. The other things are vital, including your playing technique, but that pedal is essential. And, more often than not, in the case of hard rock, heavy metal, or classic rock, that vital tonal ingredient is used to front-end the amp. Let me explain. In those good old days, before amps had master volume controls or gain controls, pedals such as overdrive, fuzz, and distortion were essential. They were required to give an amplifier oomph, even a 1959 Marshall Plexi. What these pedals would do is simply this. They'd push an amp over the edge. They'd take something that was politely distorted and make it into something gloriously mangled, unadulterated, pure, desirable metal and hard rock filth. And just so you know, it wasn't just pedals that were specifically designed to mangle your sound that were used to do this. For example, Tony Iommi's classic early Black Sabbath sound was created largely by a modified Dallas Rangemaster Treble Booster. Another guy that used the exact same pedal was Brian May. He had his homemade guitar, the Dallas Rangemaster, and a Vox AC30. Because what the Rangemaster did, in addition to boosting treble, it would boost the upper mids and also roll off some of the lows. And that would take the somewhat muddy sound of a really overdriven Vox and make it clear and punchy. And that, once again, was an essential part of Brian's tone, which to this day is highly revered and rightfully so. Another English-born tonal giant from those glorious early days, Mr. Ritchie Blackmore, the chap responsible for Smoke on the Water and other wonderful riffs, also used a treble booster for his sound. But he used something else as well. He used a modified reel-to-reel tape recorder to preamp his amp. His amp was a Marshall Major 200-watt beast, and he used the microphone preamp in his reel-to-reel to push it over the top and make that glorious Blackmore deep purple sound we all know and love. And whilst on the subject of tape echo machines that were successfully used as wonderful preamps to goose amplifiers over the edge, the Echoplex EP3 is a classic, and it still is to this very day. In fact, 3 modern-day tonal titans use the thing: Jimmy Page, Eric Johnson, and some Californian named Edward Van Halen. Not surprisingly, that sound is still highly desirable, and to that end, Dunlop offer a pedal that emulates it, and here it is. Dun, dun, da, up to 11 dBs of boost, and this gloriously gooses your front end. Now, at this point, you're probably thinking, well, thanks for history lesson, but my amp's got so much gain, it's unbelievable. In fact, I have to turn it down. Well, let me tell you something. A lot of the modern metal sounds and hard rock sounds you really like are created in exactly the same way. What the guys are doing is this. They're taking their high gain amps, backing the gain off, sometimes quite a lot, and then hitting them in the front, i.e. front-ending them with some form of pedal, be it an overdrive, a boost, a preamp pedal, whatever. And why do they do that, do I hear you ask? And even if you're not, I'm going to tell you. In my opinion, it's twofold. Number one, it sounds different and often better. And number two, it's all about feel. And if you're a guitar player, you know how tactile it is. And sometimes something the listener can't hear, you can feel in your fingers, and that inspires you to play better. It just feels and sounds bigger, tighter, wider, more desirable. And of course it's a personal thing, but that's what it's all about. And incidentally, it's not just what the pedal adds that makes it desirable, it's often what it subtracts, what it takes away. For example, the famous green legendary Ibanez TS9, the Tube Screamer. Let's look at that as a great example of a wonderful front-end piece that's used by modern metal players that have extremely high gain amps. Dun, dun, dun. Here is that great green box I was just talking about. Now, in a nutshell, what this does is this. When you step on it, it adds a very desirable upper mid-range bump, but it also does this. It rolls off the lows, making your sound appear tighter, more focused, and have more oomph. In fact, the play into this video had me playing this pedal to do exactly that. I'm using the orange Rocker 32, which has bags and bags of gain, and I backed it off and used this to give me that desired focus I want. Here's an open low-E chug with the pedal off. Same thing with the pedal on. Off. On. Now the exact same thing with a riff in A. Here it is with the pedal off. And here it is with the pedal on. The amp sounds great, but for me personally, the pedal makes all the difference. Like I said, it's not the only thing, it's an important part of the chain, but without it, I lose something. So guitar important, amp important, me, not so much, pedal, very. There are, of course, a bunch of great overdrives and boosts and distortions you can use for the same exact effect. It's up to your own personal taste, what your gear is, what you're looking to do, all that kind of good stuff. It's very personal. Now, the one thing I must say, I had the honor of doing Guitar World's Vogue Display of Power column for years and years and years. And in that, what we do is dissect popular players' rigs, literally from soup to nuts, from the pick, the strings, and the pickup, right the way through the cabinet and the speakers. So not just the pedals, but what order they were in, all of that good stuff. And the one thing that was pretty much commonplace in every single rig was some sort of front-end device. Because like I said, it makes a difference. A bunch of great guitars, a bunch of great amps, a bunch of great effects, but invariably one or more pedals that's goosing the front end, giving a different sound and feel. Because an amplifier will react differently when it's given a beefed up and slightly altered signal. Make sense? What comes out of here is puny. If you add a pedal to it, you add and subtract tonally, and you also give it more girth, more beef, so the amp is going to react to it and behave with it differently. Make sense? To give you a couple of examples of players who always use front-ending to great effect, Zakk Wylde, his overdrive is always on unless he's not playing. Or he's playing clean, which is not that often. Otherwise, it's always on. And the late, great Dimebag, he had several front-ending devices. And remember, an active or high-output pickup is also a form of front-ending. So he had high-gain pickups. He had a 6-band MXR graphic EQ. He had a Furman PQ3 or PQ4. He also had a flanger doubler by MXR. All of those things were adding to his sound, so a bunch of front-ending. Another great example, Slayer. They have a 10-band graphic EQ in front of their Marshalls. And by the way, it's a frown, not a smile. Most people think, oh, they're thrash, therefore they must be scooping mids. That would be a smiley face. And as Kerry King so aptly puts it, smiles and Slayer, not synonymous. So no smiles allowed, frown it is, boost those mids, they actually sound really good, as just proven by the Tube Screamer example. More mids, good for tone. To underline and highlight the importance of front-ending, let's take a quick look at 3 of our best-selling amp-in-a-box pedals. We'll start with the EVH 5150. And here is this beauty. I love this pedal. I use it for throw-and-go gigs all the time. As you'll see, it's got gain, bass, middle, treble, and volume. It also has a noise gate built in, which is amazing, and it's got this little boost button here. Whenever I play, I engage that and roll the gain off because it sounds and feels better to me. And if it's good for Edward, guess what? It's certainly good enough for me. And it's a front-ending amp within a box. Makes sense? Let's look at another one. This bad boy here is a Wampler Plexi drive, and the name and the flag finish kind of give away what it is. It's a Marshall Plexi amp in a box, but it has one important addition, a pre-gain boost control. And they unashamedly say, yeah, it gives you that boost in the mids that a great green pedal gives. So Marshall Tube Screamer in a box, say no more. And this bad boy here is the JHS Sweet Tea pedal, a 2-for-1 deal. You get the Angry Charlie, which is a great amp in a box version of a JCM 800 by Marshall. And you also get their very versatile Moonshine, which is their take on that certain green stompbox. And this sounds really, really good as well. But once again, it's highlighting the fact front-ending is good, even in a pedal that makes an amp sound. You front-end it with another pedal. Got me? So pedal driving pedal. Excellent. Right. Hopefully this short, sharp look at the subject of front-ending has given you some food for thought and will maybe open up some ideas for you to experiment with. At the end of the day, tone is subjective. What you like is what you need to get. So go for it with gusto. Be yourself all the time. And if you've liked this video, my name's Nick Bowcott. Please like us on Facebook. Give us a comment. If you didn't like it, my name's Mitch Gallagher. See ya.